Speaker. Speaker, the world is in crisis. The climate has changed in our lifetime, and this change is accelerating. Only this month we have seen record temperatures around the world, leading to deaths from heat in countries we've always considered to be cold, and torrential rains, flooding, and death again across Western Europe. Parts of the earth will in a few decades become uninhabitable through heat. There will be thousands of climate refugees heading north from the tropics. We will be on the front line of that wave and of the effects of sea level rise. A 2-meter rise will render our airfield unusable, while a rise of 3 meters will flood all the low-lying inhabited areas of Gibraltar, including Laguna, Glacis, all of the West Side Reclamation, and the Lower Town. Speaker, this is no joke. Those of us who are parents or grandparents need to realize that this is the world, the Gibraltar, facing those young people and children who we love. Indeed, with all the many obstacles this community has overcome through the centuries, including the pandemic we are still navigating, the effects of climate change are the ones most likely to see the end of Gibraltar as we know it in my grandchildren's lifetime. Budget deficits will be insignificant in comparison. And while Gibraltar's contribution to global emissions is very small, absolutely every gram of carbon we emit into the air is a gram too much. Let us, all of us, take it on the chin, as leaders and parliamentarians, government or opposition, as businessmen, as ordinary people in ordinary jobs, as rich residents in luxury accommodation, as family members, as you and me. We are not doing enough. We must be bolder. We must embrace the necessary changes before those other changes destroy what we know, what we treasure, what we love. So, Mr. Speaker, in reaction to an increase in the price of electricity, or when in the coming weeks we publish the climate change strategy, don't let anyone complain. Don't anyone say that our targets are too ambitious. Tell me instead that you want this and more, that you will support and work to making it go even further, that you will, in your work and in your personal lives, make the changes that you need to make. Follow our leadership. Mr. Speaker, with my preamble over, let me say that I was determined that this year's speech would be a short one, but I regret that in the end it will not be so. Not only do I have a wide range of responsibilities to which I need to do justice, but there has been so much activity around COVID. The speech, Mr. Speaker, covers 2 years. A year of plenty, followed by a year of challenge, and looks towards a lean year. While not purporting to be the Prince of Egypt, I like to think that, despite this, the future is bright. We will have to do things differently, but things we will do. Because being in government gives us an opportunity to serve. We have a duty to find ways of achieving for the benefit of the community against all adversity. But this requires that very community to reset, to rethink, to accept the reality. Mr. Speaker, in all my past budget speeches, public health has been but a small section. But for much of the past 2 years, public health has dominated my time and my life. When I look in deep frustration at all those things across my ministry that I wanted to do but didn't, I ask myself, how come we haven't done this? Or how is it this wasn't followed up? And then I remember. I think back to the spring of 2020, to the days of lockdown, of driving down through silent streets to empty offices to deliver one of the daily press conferences or to attend one of the strategic meetings. Did it really happen? Or is my mind recalling a distant nightmare? How did I get through those days of worry for the community as well as for my own family? How easily I forget the many hours researching, listening to advice, considering what advice to give, monitoring what was happening in Gibraltar and compare it against what was happening in the rest of the world, being part of taking impossible decisions that went against everything I stood for. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 took over our lives. And then so many people did so much. But, Mr. Speaker, I must single out the strong and effective leadership shown throughout by the Chief Minister through incredibly difficult days, with sensitivity and firmness, with heart and with soul. I cannot for one moment imagine how we could have pulled through like we did without Fabian. Keep your tissue in your pocket this time, Chief Minister. But it's heartfelt, Mr. Speaker, and we have pulled through. Though, as we are seeing, we still have a way to go. But what we must never do is forget the lessons. One of those lessons is the importance of public health and how it's different from what we normally think of as health care. The close link is clear, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I have worked closer with my friend and colleague, the Minister for Health and Civil Contingency, Samantha Sacramento, during the pandemic than I have ever worked with any other colleague other than the Chief Minister and Deputy Chief Minister. Mr. Speaker, COVID has shown that those with underlying health issues are particularly susceptible to the challenge of a new disease. Many of these underlying conditions, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, are preventable. Often they're related to lifestyle choice, and it is here that public health has a vital role. Sadly, the team at Public Health has over much of the past 2 years been working almost exclusively on COVID, but the latest health and lifestyle survey shortly to be published will confirm where our health problems lie and allow us to strategize the public health function in order to make a real difference so that our community is as healthy and well prepared as possible for any future but possible pandemic. I must take this opportunity to thank all those in public health, including its director, Dr. Sohail Bhatti, Angela Buller, the health promotion officers, and all the staff, including those redeployed there from different departments in the vital role of contact tracing for their outstanding work during all this time, including right now as cases rise. Mr. Speaker, the effects of COVID range far, and many of our projects, as we have heard, have suffered setbacks. Work on one of the new parks was just weeks away from commencing. Works on 3 new schools were a couple of months away, and work would have started earlier this year on the Cultural Hub and National Theatre. Many other smaller projects, as well as large cultural events, have sadly and disappointingly also had to be cancelled or postponed. All of these, in their different ways, add value to our community, and I'll refer to some of them later. Mr. Speaker, I had the honour of being given responsibility for culture following the 2019 general election. I immediately carried out a significant restructure of the administration of the ministry, as well as a full assessment of cultural premises, and I met with representatives of all of the many cultural groups. I commenced planning of the new style Gibraltar Music Festival, took plans for the National Theatre to an advanced stage, and started preparing for innovative and creative initiatives across all cultural disciplines. And then COVID struck. While many things now had to wait, what I was not prepared to do was allow culture to be stopped in its tracks. It is, of course, almost by definition impossible to stop culture, but there were those who felt that it was an irrelevance, an importance, and of low priority while we were struggling to cope with the crescendo of COVID concerns. The opposite, of course, was the case. Never before had keeping us entertained, hopeful, and enriched been so important. And the cultural world of Gibraltar, a world that I love so much and which I have often called the heart and soul of the community, rose to the occasion. While the GHA, ERS, Public Health, and the emergency services did their incredible work as professionals on the front line, Gibraltar Cultural Services and a myriad of groups and individuals, from singers and dancers to writers and artists, musicians, and even lone buglers, were there in support and holding up that most vital of elements, that is, morale. Mr. Speaker, I was fortunate to have taken over the culture portfolio from my friend and colleague Stephen Linares, who did sterling work over the years. Indeed, leading on from his budget speech in 2019, I am happy to once again reiterate the government's commitment to the development of culture locally and to exporting our arts at an international level in order to get Gibraltar known even more in that world. As Minister for Culture, I am delighted to confirm that since the Cultural Development Unit was established in Stephen's time, our cultural services thriving and moving from strength to strength. While sadly this coming year the level of grants to cultural organizations has had to be reduced, the unit continues to introduce training programs for cultural officials, groups, coaches, performers, and cultural persons generally. The unit continues to work with government, departments and agencies and other stakeholders to be able to provide more platforms for our cultural community. I'm very pleased that in December 2019, we presented the first ever cultural awards. These recognize potential, ability, talent, and achievement of those in our community who have supported our cultural development. The first two Lifetime Awards, given to Cecil Gomez and Arturo Harper, show the caliber of those in our community who deserve recognition. Mr. Speaker, cross-frontier and international exhibitions, including those with Morocco, continue to be held, as is the Youth Arts Jamboree, with projects having included technical theatre workshops, creative writing and poetry workshops, and a voluntary scheme offering students work experience opportunities at the John Mackintosh Hall and Library. At this point, I want to recognise the work of all the many cultural groups that enrich our community. GAMPA continued its training in music and performing arts online and was involved in many of the cultural initiatives during COVID. Many dance and drama groups continued their activities online also, despite the frustration of not being able to perform to live audiences. This spring, we were able to hold the Drama Festival once again, the first such festival anywhere in the world for over a year, and the Gibraltar International Dance Festival, the Festival for Young Musicians, the Young Arts Competitive Exhibition, and the ever-popular World Book Day celebrations. In November 2020, my team at GCS produced a successful Literature Week dedicated to local authors. We will build on its success as we promote and encourage the growing Gibraltarian literature. 3 street art murals were completed with more plans. The Street Art Committee also approved more Gustavo Bacariza works in other areas of Main Street as a continuation of the Castle Street Bacariza street art projects. One of the most significant cultural events for me was a retrospective exhibition that celebrated the life and legacy of Gibraltarian Elio Cruz. We felt Elio deserved this recognition with the exhibition celebrating his talent as an artist, playwright, poet, musician, and designer. This was organized together with Alice Mascareñas. You will recall, Mr. Speaker, that this Parliament awarded the Gibraltar Medallion of Honor to Elio Cruz posthumously. In September 2020, we launched a new video archives portal, Culture TV. The portal was one of many COVID projects planned and produced during lockdown. The portal provides still local entertainment, and the public will be able to access a variety of shows and other performances staged in Gibraltar over the years as a tribute to Gibraltar's richness in culture, which forms an important part of our social heritage. Mr. Speaker, if you watch carefully, you may see a number of performances by a certain Minister for Culture that, if you didn't know that side of him, may well leave you in shock. Mr. Speaker, we continue to promote the use of our art galleries and have also opened one of the vaults at Gemma to local artists and groups, with several successful exhibitions and other events taking place in this culture and heritage space over the last year. 2 rededications have also been organized this June, both at the National Gallery and at Gemma, promoting newly acquired works. In 2020, and within COVID guidelines, my team at Culture produced a cultural summer program for young people, which provided for around 40 children. And GCS will continue to support the summer sports and leisure programs again this year. Over the last 2 years, and with the exception of COVID cancellations, the Culture Services also ran its usual annual program and festivals, including the Gibraltar Fair, national celebrations, New Year's celebrations, Christmas, Festival of Lights, many of these, of course, online. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, GCS has absorbed other cultural programs, events, and administrative duties, including the running of the Mayor's office and organizing events formally coordinated by the Ministry, which has been significantly restructured and streamlined to become a smaller but more efficient and highly effective team. This has eliminated duplication and allow GCS to better be able to support the many groups and associations and to better coordinate and develop cultural activities. The new office of the mayor supported His Worship John Gonsalves during his tenure and is now providing similar support to the new mayor, Christian Santos. Not surprisingly, His Worship's plan include a great deal of cultural use of the City Hall, and we are working together on a number of exciting initiatives. I want to thank John Gonsalves for his work during a most difficult 2 years and congratulate Christian and Deputy Mayor Carmen Gomez on their appointments. Mr. Speaker, as ever, our team at the John Mackintosh Hall was instrumental in supporting the Gibraltar Parliament and the election teams with the European election and the general election of 2019. 2019, too, the Island Games were perhaps the highlight of Gibraltar's social calendar in the last financial year before COVID. GCS formed an integral part of the organising team and supported the Island Games Committee with all cultural aspects related to the Games. Mr. Speaker, the government launched the Safety Advisory Group, or SAG, early last year with the aim of bringing together key agencies to ensure the safety of all events in our community. In other areas, 87 new artworks were acquired for the government art collection over the last 2 years, including purchases at auction and from private collections. Special purchases include works by Gustavo Vacarisas, Christian Hook, and Rudecindo Mania. Mr. Speaker, the John Mackintosh Hall Library social media platform continues to generate and oversee content promoting related initiatives, storytelling sessions, school visits, and literature. After tracking patterns of use, we introduced new opening hours at the library, including Saturday morning opening, which suit members better and with very positive feedback. Several projects to improve the service of our National Lending Library have been completed, including updating of member records and computerizing logging processes and reviewing and catalogue the extensive Gibraltar collection. The library received its latest delivery of 295 new books during the lockdown in April. A new area has been allocated for new books, which is visible on entry to the library and has a comfortable seating area for users to peruse the books at their leisure. Mr. Speaker, we are proud of how we manage our cultural facilities. The refurbishment and maintenance of all our facilities plays an important part in allowing us to support culture. A new online booking system has been developed for clients to book across all facilities from one platform. We hope that this will help the user to book and pay more easily as we encourage paperless and sustainable methods. During most of 2020, the John Mackintosh Hall and Inces Hall were made available for community use for dance and drama groups who were lacking in space, always strictly adhering to public health advice. Work at the Central Hall and the Inces Hall are clear examples of our commitment to providing the best possible facilities for our cultural community and the public, and we were able to carry out important work before the impact of COVID hit. Work included at the Central Hall complete refurbishment to the main ballroom, exposing heritage walls and ceilings, plus the original ceiling and stonework, doing justice to its former use as a place of worship. The refurbishment also included the paving of the rear and exterior areas and the renovation of the entrance lobby. The stained glass window will shortly be replaced with a contemporary design, a stained glass window that no one even remembered had even been there. Mr. Speaker, this is one project that illustrates a close relationship between culture and heritage, one which my ministry builds upon. We have made the Inces Hall Theatre accessible to all for the first time ever. This has been long overdue, and monies were invested for this project prior to COVID. It includes a lift and disabled toilets, making the theatre accessible for persons with reduced mobility. We've also refurbished changing rooms and other areas of this facility, upgrading it in line with the government's disability policies. Other cultural facilities and venues have also seen upgrades and facelifts, many with environmental aims, including recycle bins, bicycle racks, installation of water fountain, and the purchase of technical equipment. This, together with other work at Gemma, the Gustavo Vacarisas Gallery, the Mario Phillison Gallery, and of course the many premises that we manage and which are used by clubs, associations, and academies. We are now having to curb spending in view of budget constraints, but we still have plans and we hope to be able to fulfill them as things improve. This is important. We have thousands of members of our community using cultural premises that need work and investment. My ministry carried out a survey of all of these just before COVID and hopes to be able to work before long in areas such as North Jumpers Bastion and Europa Road. I'm well aware of the needs for space, for rehearsal, studios and so on, and we are working on a plan to provide more. Among other things, we are further opening up community use of premises such as in the new schools. As we have seen, Mr. Speaker, culture played an important role during COVID-19 and the social lockdowns, and led a cultural initiative and program that transformed the way our community interacted with cultural events. These included GCS and GAMPA working together on various initiatives as part of a daytime service, an online program of shows, performances, and other educational initiatives aired during weekdays. Lego grew in popularity and relevance during the time of lockdown, and an exhibition approved by Lego headquarters in Denmark was held at the Mackintosh Hall Gallery, proving to be one of the most popular in a long time. The Frontline Workers exhibition, where portraits of our frontline workers were exhibited in collaboration with the Fine Arts Association, attracted 52 artists. Online events, including the National Week Classical Concert and New Year's Eve celebrations. Apart from senior support to CTB, GCS seconded 12 members of staff to the vaccination centre at the ICC, and the maintenance and facilities team redecorated the centre prior to opening with equipment and furniture provided from their stock to help facilitate the quick opening of the centre. In May this year, the Chief Minister opened another major landmark exhibition, Culture versus COVID, which paid tribute to artists, performers and the public, displaying all the cultural events and all the work done throughout the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, Gibraltar needs a real theatre. Many thousands of our people are or have been involved in the performing arts, dance, acting, music, through the decades, at least as many as in sports and at least as successful. So many Gibraltarian artists have become established around the world. Only this year, we've heard of the success of two of our young dancers, Jonathan Lutwich and Simon Anthony, now working in the West End, joining Nolan Robber, who's there too. Imagine where they all would be if they had had proper facilities here. In present facilities, we are unable to host professional productions, and we have to spend huge amounts on bringing in stages, lights, and technicians when we do. Add to that the need for studio and workshop space, and for the visual arts too, and the potential for expansion in our National Lending Library, and the case for the planned National Theatre and Cultural Hub is more than made. Work on this would have started already, but the pandemic stopped that particular performance too. But for all the above reasons, Mr. Speaker, as recently announced, the Gibraltar National Theatre Foundation has been created to continue with the project, seeking alternative funding until better times come. I wish now to acknowledge the already significant contribution to this fund by the Kishin Alwani Foundation. More details to come later. The plan is that with the theatre will come facilities to create a larger cultural centre at the John Mackintosh Hall complex, providing for additional venues which will allow the introduction of new cultural activities and communities use, refurbishment and extension to the public library with a new music library and a significant extension of the children's section. Mr. Speaker, there have been and will be a great many other events and initiatives, too many to mention here. But I must say that I'm impressed by the work ethics and efficacy of the team at GCS. People often don't realize how much they do, often behind the scenes, supporting organizers, groups and societies, extending their support well beyond contractual requirements. During lockdown, they not only kept culture very much alive, they expanded and extended its reach. Mr. Speaker, while large events and performances from artists from outside Gibraltar are great to watch and attend, I believe that my main task as Minister for Culture is the reverse, to nurture our cultural offering and those who engender it here in Gibraltar and to showcase our culture abroad. Those will be the main thrusts of our work in culture in the coming year, COVID or not. Mr. Speaker, the year 2020 was a year when everything changed. It challenged humanity in unimaginable ways. I'm proud to say, Mr. Speaker, that officers in all other areas under my responsibility too performed in an exemplary manner and rose to the occasion in assisting all areas of government with this challenge. Let me continue with environment. Over half the staff across all divisions were redeployed to support COVID work. The department led in the development of COVID analytics and contributed to the daily situation reports. This seriously delayed much of our work. However, work on Brexit continued and ranged from pet passports to food imports to exportation of waste. Significantly, during 2020, the team oversaw the procurement already mentioned by the Deputy Chief Minister, the procurement, delivery, installation and ongoing maintenance of the waste contingency equipment. Mr. Speaker, as always, Gibraltar continues to work hard with our colleagues in the overseas territories and Crown dependencies. Islands and other small territories largely surrounded by sea are important for the protection of the oceans and are particularly susceptible to the impending sea level rise. There are now many important initiatives to deal with climate change adaptation, and the Environment Department has recently embarked on a wide consultation process to ensure that we are prepared for the changes already hitting the planet. I was proud to represent the overseas territories and attend COP25, the Climate Change Summit in Madrid in 2019. And I am proud, too, to continue to chair the Overseas Territories and Crown Dependencies Environmental Ministers' Council. In this and other fora, we continue to press the UK to ensure Gibraltar's inclusion in international agreements, including the Paris Agreement, the Barcelona Convention, the Ballast Water Convention, ICCAT, and the extension of the Intercontinental Biosphere Reserve of the Mediterranean to include Gibraltar. I am pleased to report that the Berne Convention on the Conservation of European Wildlife and Natural Habitats was extended to Gibraltar last December. Mr. Speaker, the department has been active over the past 2 years on the marine front. For example, departmental officers have been accredited by British Divers Marine Life Rescue and has undertaken marine renewable research with the University of Highlands and Islands. A lot of other work has been carried out in this area, including the Atlantic bluefin tuna sports fishing tagging program. Additionally, the department took part in the 2020 Forum of Marine Protected Areas in the Mediterranean. Unfortunately, in February this year, it had to deal with the oil spill ecological impact assessment and overseeing cleaning operations with drone deployment together with the ports. And they continue to work with colleagues in the Port Department on improving industry practices in this field. Despite this, the state of our waters continues to improve, as can be seen in our updated Marine Strategy Framework monitoring report published just last week. An otter in our ports, a wintering osprey, healthy dolphin and tuna populations, and increased occurrence of whales and other marine life do not happen by accident. The exceptional awareness work of the Nautilus project has to be recognized in this context. Mr. Speaker, the government's term in office has seen an unprecedented level of environmental legislation with nearly 200 instruments published. Recently added was legislation to ban plastic bottles on the Upper Rock and banning the importation of most types of plastic bag, including Devil's Tooth Green Corridor as part of the Gibraltar Nature Reserve, the creation of the Gibraltar National Trails, and legislation making it illegal to interfere with the natural behavior of macaques. We continue to seek to ensure that the whole public service adheres to the Sustainable Development Goals, and consistent with this, we have prepared guidelines for sustainable catering and for sustainable events and carried on our work in encouraging young people to pursue these vital goals. As expected, the amount of waste produced dropped during last year. Recycling volumes were also down, possibly due partly to the persistent but unfounded word on the street that recyclates are mixed after collection. We will be campaigning this year to get recycling back on track. We will also be introducing measures to improve the collection of refuse from the city centre in particular. While on the subject of waste, I wish to once again acknowledge the work of the ESG in general, but also specifically in this context in relation to Clean Up the World and litter. Mr. Speaker, the issue of sewage treatment is one of the ones that disappoints me most. While the reasons for the slow progress were outside of the government control, as an environmentalist, I am still hugely disappointed. A large part of the original delay was the search for a suitable technology. But significantly, as I have explained publicly before, we had advanced well on project funding from the European Investment Bank when the result of the Brexit referendum led to them pulling out after 2 years of work. Despite this, the pre-works contract with the joint venture that had successfully tendered was signed, and work on design and site preparation commenced when one of the two companies that made up the JV went into administration. This led to complicated legal issues which further delayed the project. Mr. Speaker, I'm not happy with the situation, and I'm immensely frustrated that administrative matters have interfered with a project that had full political support and makes tremendous environmental sense. We are, however, actively pursuing several options, and I have no intention of letting this go until it happens. Mr. Speaker, on air quality, over the last 3 years, the fixed monitoring network run by the Environmental Agency, working with UK consultants Ricardo, has been supplemented with emerging technologies, providing indicative monitoring in potential hotspot areas and adding to the overall understanding of our air quality. The global lockdown response to COVID caused an unprecedented reduction in global economic and transport activity, which in turn reduced the concentration of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter levels. In Gibraltar, reductions in air pollutants were quickly picked up by our stations and demonstrated very early on how even small reductions in traffic can greatly impact air quality. It is important to note, Mr. Speaker, that some of the air quality indicators, such as nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide and benzene, had improved markedly between 2018 and 2019, meaning that air quality was improving before COVID considerations came into play. Mr. Speaker, the environmental statistics reports for 2018 and 2019, which clearly show this, have gone on live on the government website this afternoon. And also going live tomorrow morning are our most recent greenhouse gas inventories. In 2020, nitrogen dioxide levels were down across all sites, Roger Road and Withams both showing compliant levels for the 3rd year running. PM10 levels have also dropped again, down to 20 micrograms per cubic metre at Bleak House and 22 at Roger Road. The EU target is 40. PM 2.5, which is the most dangerous particulate matter, has also dropped, and in 2020, for the first time, met the more stringent World Health Organization target of 10 milligrams, compared to 20 for the EU, which we have always complied with. This is so significant, given that we have in the past been criticized for not achieving WHO targets for this contaminant. In general terms, the picture across the board is of improved air quality and compliance across nearly all targets, which reflects the realities of the new power station as well as reduced traffic. But I'm not complacent. It is clear that traffic is the greatest local contributor at the moment to reduce air quality and to our carbon footprint, with shipping also a significant contributor now that we have dealt with the diesel power generation problem. I take this opportunity to welcome back my friend and colleague Paul Valvin to the portfolio of traffic and transport, and I look forward to working with him on improving and greening transport across Gibraltar, while I look forward too to continuing to work closely with another friend and colleague, Vijay Daryanani, in tackling issues to do with shipping, including, of course, GibDoc and tourism. Mr. Speaker, this brings me to renewables. The first phase of the solar framework agreement was assigned to successful candidates, and we now have solar panels supplying clean energy across 13 different sites in Gibraltar. More will follow as we catch up with the backlog in deployment caused by COVID. While my colleague Albert Isola will provide more information as Minister for Utilities, I am pleased to say that solar power production is slowly but steadily increasing, and I predict a considerable jump in solar power production this coming year. Mr. Speaker, the Environmental Agency continues to advise me in many areas and continues to provide a 24-hour on-call service which saw environmental health officers engage in 175 call-outs last year. The agency works closely with the department on Brexit issues such as contingency planning on food, imports and export of waste in the event of a no negotiated deal scenario. The agency remained active during lockdown with measures put in place to protect staff while at the same time adapting to continue to deliver critical services to the public, as well as ensuring that the administration of waste exports and food imports remained fluid. No easy tasks. The agency assisted in the disinfection of government estates, contact tracing, and assisting the Director of Public Health in the enforcement of permit conditions imposed on the catering industry. This also involved a collaborative effort with the Royal Gibraltar Police in carrying out evening patrols to ensure that conditions are complied with, to ensure an environment which is safe as possible for both workers and in the industry and for the public. Mr. Speaker, the agency continues to provide a significant contribution to the government's anti-dog fouling campaign. So far in 2021, 63 DNA samples have been collected, with 11 fixed penalty notices issued to offenders. Officers from the agency and the department also carry out patrols during which they check that dogs being walked on the public highway are duly licensed and registered. The agency continues to monitor the quality of our bathing waters, where standards have been improving over the past few years. 5 of our bathing waters are now classed as excellent, with Western Beach improving and now being classified as good rather than sufficient. The agency is a competent authority for control of major accident hazards, or COMA. In conjunction with the Office of Civil Contingencies and the UK Health and Safety Executive, the first LNG live exercise was organised in January 2020 and carried out with all emergency responses and stakeholders taking part. On to beaches, Mr. Speaker. The Beaches Division of the Department works hard to ensure our beaches are ready for the enjoyment of all. 2 new jellyfish nets, one for Eastern Beach South and one for Catalan Bay, were installed in 2019. The usual beach levelling and reprofiling of beach at Eastern Beach and Catalan Bay was carried out on time in both years. Many don't realise just how much work goes into getting the beaches ready for the bathing season. There are too many examples for me to list, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the management of the cemetery ensured that, albeit with restrictions, families were still able to bury their loved ones in a timely manner. January and February 2021 saw an unprecedented number of COVID deaths in the community, and I must thank the cemetery staff for their dedication and professionalism at this time. Despite the unparalleled emotional burden and stress on these individuals, they continue to work diligently on a half-crew basis to bury as many as 7 members of our community a day during this most difficult of times. I must also pay tribute and thank the former cemetery superintendent, Alfred Ryan, who retired in August 2020 after 50 years of service and dedication to the community. Speaker, planting trees and creating green areas remains a top priority for the government. Such is the number of trees that we have planted that we now find ourselves struggling to find suitable new areas for tree planting. That said, Mr. Speaker, tree planting continued with nearly 250 planted since autumn 2019. This included those new trees in the refurbished and much improved Governor's Parade, and of course in the completion of Midtown Park. It really is incredible how we have greened the heart of our city. This is all part of the way we can use nature-based solutions to improve our carbon performance. Recently, too, we were able to dedicate Juan Carlos Perez Promenade, a tribute to the life and work of Juan Carlos Perez, a much-loved member of the House and former GSLP minister. Mr. Speaker, botanic gardens never cease to evolve. The Alameda's collection in its nursery of plants from throughout the world continues to grow in size and international reputation, with new species being added to planted areas throughout the gardens. As ever, improvement to aesthetics are combined with the showcasing of plants that are increasingly valuable for education and conservation purposes. Large sections of path were repaired during the last but one financial year, alleviating the effects of root action and erosion. Conservation of key Gibraltar species is one of the core roles of the gardens, and it continues to propagate native and endemic species in ways that maximize genetic diversity of these important collections. Thus, the gardens' work is crucial to the conservation of species found only in Gibraltar and nowhere else in the world, as illustrated by the rescuing from certain extinction of the Gibraltar campion in the 1990s. Hundreds of plants of this species are now produced every year. The extremely popular children's education program continues to grow in scope and activity, including its outreach work with local schools. Most importantly for education on the site, construction work is now underway to develop an exciting new education area in the heart of the gardens for outdoor learning about horticulture and the environment. The project has been made possible without any government funding whatsoever through the very generous contribution of donors, among which the Kusuma Trust, Casais, Gamma Architects and the Rupani family stand out. Mr. Speaker, the impact of the pandemic on the nature reserve was both good and bad. Sadly, tourism numbers plummeted, as did our revenue, which had grown steadily since the fee system was revised a few years ago. We are still away from returning to pre-COVID levels of tourism, although this has increased significantly in the last 2 months. But the department has been working hard, maintaining sites, clearing paths, and cleaning up during this time. Habitat management continues and has improved areas for wildlife. Speed ramps were introduced, new picnic sites were prepared. I am delighted, Mr. Speaker, to report that Tovey Cottage Field Centre was completed and inaugurated this spring. Schools have wasted no time in visiting the centre, which has been a complete success. The Gibraltar Nature Reserve team ably manages the different parts of our reserve. I'm convinced that the Upper Rock is at its best in recent decades, both as a tourist asset and for wildlife. Mr. Speaker, the improvements continue and more will be seen as soon as funds allow. Now we have an obligation to maximise on the income that the Upper Rock can generate, while always ensuring that residents can continue to enjoy this, our only real bit of countryside, without charge. We will therefore, following discussion with stakeholders, be introducing an increase in the entry fee to non-residents by no later than the 1st of April next year. The recently launched St. Michael's Cave experience is a must-watch and is already awing audiences young and old. We will continue to search for modern, attractive and environmentally friendly ways to give Gibraltar a creative market edge which will ensure return visitors to the Rock, no doubt to the delight of my honourable friend, Minister Darianani. Mr. Speaker, the management of the yellow-legged gull continued throughout the pandemic, and as a result we have ensured the long-term trend in the breeding population of gulls in Gibraltar continues to be one of decline. And an example of evidence of this, GONS recently reported to me that while up to 5 years ago, counts of young gulls on our beaches and at sea at this time of year reached 500 in a day, a count last week revealed just 38 young gulls. I must thank the Avian Control Unit for their efforts and dedication during this time. The GONS Bird of Prey Unit continues its formidable work in rescue, rehabilitation and tracking with extraordinary success and continued to do this throughout the pandemic. A number of release and reintroduction programs are ongoing, including the hugely successful breeding and release of Barbary partridges, with other initiatives planned. Mr. Speaker, macaque management is another of those areas of wildlife management which of necessity continued unabated this past year. For the second time in many years, we have had zero growth of the monkey population without mass culling as a result of the benign contraceptive measures that have been implemented. Incursions into town were much less frequent, even during the pandemic. Lack of disturbance and of illegal feeding by visitors, which ensured that the animals did more natural foraging within the Upper Rock, is likely to have contributed to this. As they too are susceptible to COVID-19, special measures were introduced in law prohibiting human contact with the macaques, as we aim to ensure that this disease is not transmitted to these animals and then back to humans. Mr. Speaker, as we know, thanks to the work of my friend and colleague Albert Isola, Gibraltar already enjoys a reputation for leading in financial services and for robust regulation. During the past year, we have been developing legislation and working with relevant stakeholders around the world through virtual workshops for a new regulatory framework which will cater for green instruments. The framework will provide for green instruments to be issued and traded on regulated marketplaces in or from Gibraltar. The objective is to facilitate trade as widely as possible, but only of green instruments which demonstrate significant environmental integrity. The international trading of environmental assets has an important role to play in achieving these targets set out by the Paris Agreement. The issue preventing that market from reaching its full potential is the lack of trust on the part of investors. Our legislation will provide just that assurance. Mr. Speaker, there is a dire need to reassess the way that economies are run and assessed. Economists globally have so far failed to attribute real value to environmental assets, including biodiversity. I am hoping that Gibraltar will be among the first to do so, following the game-changing review published last year by Sir Partha Dasgupta. Mr. Speaker, in respect of heritage, the Heritage and Antiquities Advisory Council, HAC, has now consolidated its functions and is an efficient tool in ensuring that heritage is protected and well managed. Earlier this year, I established a subcommittee of HAC in order to produce a heritage management plan for Gibraltar, a vision document that will ensure a future for our past. The small heritage team has been successful over the past 2 years in executing a number of small, low-budget, but important projects. After so many years of neglect, Nanswell Cistern was opened for the first time ever for all to enjoy. This included the beautification and natural landscaping of the external areas, as well as the cleaning and the restoration of the well itself. The Gibraltar Heritage Trust has kindly taken over the management of visitors to the site. Another important milestone was the launching last week of the Ministry for Heritage website. The website now provides the public and professionals with as accurate a summary of Gibraltar's many heritage assets as possible. In this, Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize the work of Marcello Sanguinetti, recently retired, in seeing through a total revision of how heritage is managed in my ministry. In other areas, Phase 2 of the Tampion and Gun Maintenance Program was completed and Tampions were placed over 23 barrels. The work included the complete restoration of the iconic Coiler Depression Carriage and Grand Casemate Square. Restoration works are now nearly complete at the convent. We've also refurbished many of our city plaques, repainted the names on our city walls, and restored and repainted our old street signs. We have digitized maps and plans held at HM Dockyard in collaboration with the Gibraltar National Archives and the Heritage Trust. Archaeological works throughout the area of the Europa Point Sports Complex are now finalized, with a walking trail now open. There have also been some interesting finds at the Garrison Library, including an intact wall, archway and steps leading into what was the Governor's Garden from street level, dating from before 1800. Over the past year, restorations have included the medieval vaults in the new Zappo Bank at Casemate and the old police station at Irish Town. Private initiatives, all under the combined supervision of our archaeologist, Dominic Lopez, the Heritage Trust, and the National Museum, who have always also provided expert advice as the North Gorge, the Old Casino, and Orange Bastion. All of this is only possible due to the close working relationship the Ministry for Heritage has with these other heritage stakeholders, together with other departments such as town planning and technical services. In all my years of involvement in heritage, never before have all the players worked so closely and so much in support of each other, all to the benefit of heritage. Mr. Speaker, the work of the Gibraltar National Museum continued throughout. While public areas were closed, a highly successful virtual museum was created. The posts were put on standard social media and the response was huge. With the reopening of the museum, the virtual museum's output was scaled down but not closed altogether. I am pleased that the Calpe Conference programme was not halted. A very successful conference was held on a Gibraltar theme with an impressive panel of Gibraltarian speakers. This coming year, the subject is Iberian Neanderthals, and the occasion will mark the 95th anniversary of the discovery of the Neanderthal remains at Devil's Tower. All the leading Iberian scientists in this field will be coming to Gibraltar in September, COVID permitting, showing once again how central Gibraltar has become in this field of study. The work at Gorham's Cave World Heritage Site continues. Researchers are returning to the site, and new and interesting discoveries will undoubtedly hit the headlines in the coming months. One recent publication was that of the Gorgonian, the fragments of a ceramic item depicting the Gorgon Medusa. More recently, a wonderful reconstruction of the entire Gorgonian has been produced by the museum. And it's pleasing to see that the necessary skills and expertise are available now within the museum's team for this kind of work now to be done in-house and at low cost. Not so long ago, we contracted an international team to produce the sculptures of Nana and Flint, the Gibraltar Neanderthals. Now, reconstructions of Calpea, a Neolithic woman who lived some 7,500 years ago, the Gorgonian and Yanta have been produced exclusively by the museum team in-house. Yanta was a reconstruction of a Bronze Age male who had been excavated from Bray's cave years ago. Genetic work showed that he had come from the Russian steppe. So much of our ancient history remains there to be discovered. The museum continues to plan new displays, and I am pleased to announce that Yanta, along with Calpea and other exhibits, will form part of a new gallery dedicated to the Pillars of Hercules. Restoration is an important aspect of the museum's work, and the support to the Ministry for Heritage in many restoration projects, such as a lime kiln on Willis's Road, it is a fundamental part of that work. There's a great deal more restoration to do, which we will have to strictly prioritize in view of finances. The Speaker, the close relationship with the Gibraltar Heritage Trust continues and is indeed going from strength to strength. The mutual support that exists between the Trust and the Ministry on day-to-day work allows projects to continue unimpeded. The Witham Cemetery project, now in its 5th year, is an example of the Trust's dedication. Among other work, the Trust has also taken on a voluntary project to restore Lord Airy's Battery, a 9.2-inch emplacement at the top of the rock. Challenging as the last financial year has been, given COVID and subsequent lockdowns, the Gibraltar Garrison Library team remained in post throughout. While footfall came to a dramatic halt, the library saw a substantial increase in their online outreach. This is reflected in the level of electronic research support to our Gibraltar-based community, including students, and to UK-based university students. Digital copies of materials were produced for these purposes, and the library team are continuing in this endeavour. Sensitive, heritage-driven capital works were undertaken in the basement for the establishment of a digitisation studio, a conservation department, and a secure, climatised repository room. It's also reassuring to know that members of our community are increasingly referring to the Garrison Library as a central repository for gifting their collections. These are special and often rare collections of great Gibraltar significance, and it's an initiative that we encourage. The library will now be looking to creating a Friends of the Gibraltar Garrison Library with the aim of maximising the commercial potential of the library. Speaker, the last 2 years have been years of exciting renewal and stressful reprofiling in rapid succession in education. 2019-20 was exciting. We saw the start of long overdue co-education in our comprehensives, the move to the fantastic new secondary schools, realignment of key stages, and the start of the move towards more vocational opportunities. In sharp contrast, 2020-21 saw the impact of lockdowns and isolation, with a need to reinvent the way we teach. Online teaching became the norm of necessity, markedly improving in content during the second lockdown, and while never the same as face-to-face teaching, it certainly ensured that our children kept learning. COVID was an incredibly stressful time in education for children, parents, and of course teachers. They all had to change what they did and how they did it, and we saw flexibility and an adaptation at levels that we had never seen before. But we did it. And my strong view is that our children were much better taught during this time than their peers in UK, and that for the most part, they have been able to catch up on lost time. I think that we are now much better equipped to continue online learning components and certainly using the internet to communicate with parents. More fundamentally, the fact that for 2 years we have not had formal GCSE or A-level exams has presented to me the possibility of transforming our education system even further and looking at options such as are used in other countries where education is much less exam-orientated and more performance-based. Of course, COVID has meant that we have not as yet started work on 3 of our planned schools, the Gibraltar College, Governor's Meadow and Bishop Fitzgerald. These are, of course, still planned, but delayed. However, the start of work on the new St. Mary's School is imminent, given that this will have other funding arrangements, and work is proceeding in important improvement in some other schools, notably St. Paul's. We sadly had to deal with fire damage at Governor's Meadow and flooding at St. Joseph's, but both were speedily repaired and refurbished. My thanks to all the staff and to GEA and GJBS for their prompt and skilled work. Special educational needs, Mr. Speaker, is one of the most important areas under my responsibility. I'm pleased to say that one notable project that we have continued is the new St. Martin's School, delayed as it was by the difficulties the construction industry faced during COVID. Happily, I can confirm that St. Martin's School will open for pupils this coming September. The school has additional facilities, including a hydrotherapy pool, enhanced therapy areas, and specialist classrooms. All staff have been and are working extremely hard, planning for the migration to the new building. Mr. Speaker, the vitally important relationship between the department and the parents of St. Martin's pupils has never been closer. During lockdown, there was close communication and collaboration to discuss ways in which families could be supported, and this positive relationship has continued, as evidenced by the frequent meetings and close working together, which will soon result in a much improved provision for pupils and former pupils of St. Martin's and their families, details of which will emerge soon. I thank the Parents Association and the Little Smiles charity for all their work here. Indeed, meetings with parents groups are now a regular part of my agenda. Mr. Speaker, our special educational needs coordinators or SENCOs continue to have a full-time role and are now able to dedicate their time on all SEN-related issues. In addition, there's been a great deal of training in special needs afforded to all the staff, including in such areas as autism and dyslexia. The school's counselling service was introduced in August 2019. I don't know how it managed without them. They deal with hundreds of cases, and they too were able to continue the work during lockdown through online platforms. Some important initiatives here have included the development of staff well-being. This has been identified as an area of concern prior to COVID and was of course exacerbated by pressures brought about by COVID. Mr. Speaker, there is a growing number of children in our education system who have been impacted by trauma, children who have a high number of adverse childhood experiences. Some of these children are in residential care, some still living at home, and others spend time, sadly, in and out of prison. The school environment can be a challenging place for these children, causing high levels of anxiety, frequent meltdowns, violent outbursts, depression, or school avoidance. In September 2019, the Old St. Bernard's Nursery became available, and it was renamed TLC, Teaching and Learning Centre, with the acronym putting emphasis on nurture. In the past academic year, the TLC has helped to fill this gap and provide a base and a lifeline for a number of our most vulnerable children. The flexibility outside the school setting has given these children a calmer, more flexible setting where they could access both academic and therapeutic activities. Speaker, scholarship numbers in the 2021 academic year were 811 mandatory undergraduate scholarships, 211 postgraduate scholarships, and 83 other discretionary scholarships. We currently have 1,105 students in higher education, something to make the community proud. Mr. Speaker, we will this year continue to provide for all the mandatory scholarships, and it is very likely that we will have more students in higher education than ever before. Speaker, all our upper and lower primary schools have now embarked on our digital teaching and learning initiative. The rollout to secondary schools began prior to the disruption caused by COVID, with some teachers receiving their initial training and subsequent professional development. We are targeting the coming academic year to complete the rollout. Today, we have rolled out over 2,000 devices in support of the initiative. The Key Stage 4 curriculum in our secondary school is now fully equitable with respect to the range of subjects that pupils can choose at the end of Year 9. The September 2020 Year 10 cohort will be the first one ever in Gibraltar to benefit from this equalization. This is so overdue, and I am very pleased that all our young people will now have equal opportunities at this stage. We now have a hair and beauty level 2 course at both secondary schools and the follow-up hairdressing course at the Gibraltar College, which launched in September 2020. Plans are advanced to introduce a vocational BTEC in music performance in association with GAMPA. Both secondary schools have made great strides in offering a digital technology course at Key Stage 4 and will now launch GCSE Computer Science as from this coming September. This builds on the revamp of the IT curriculum at Key Stage 3 to deliver a greater emphasis on computational thinking skills and coding. Our teaching and learning initiative has a huge focus on developing digital skills in young learners, and some of the learning that is being demonstrated by our young learners is breathtaking. Other developments in this digital area will be announced soon. Speaker, the Department of Education worked in close collaboration with the University of Gibraltar to develop a bespoke postgraduate certificate in education aligned to the teaching standards in the UK. This exciting new program has now seen 2 cohorts of students mentored and supported by the excellent practitioners in our schools. The Department of Education launched education.gov.gi in the midst of the pandemic as a way of providing stakeholders with information. This platform quickly developed as services were digitized and improved upon. To date, the enrollment processes into our schools and the scholarship processes and subsequent contract issuing have been fully digitized. The website also includes information on accessing the educational psychologists and other support mechanisms offered by the department. Over time, we will see the rollout of other support mechanisms for students and parents appearing on the platform. Speaker, the challenging period that was the review of teachers' pay was successfully resolved some time ago. More recently, most of the posts that had been acted for a number of years, some pending a TLR review, have been discussed and agreed with the union and have been advertised. This will ensure that subjects and pastoral care are managed by teachers on a long-term basis, which will result in much-needed continuity for our schools and much-needed consistency for pupils. This year, we have engaged with the NASUWT with the aim of developing and completing a zero-tolerance policy for any aggressive, violent, or antisocial behavior in our schools, and we are a footstep away from completing an acting policy and a CPD policy. We discuss matters on an almost weekly basis, and the Social Partnership Forum has reconvened. Speaker, there is so much I could say about the work at education. We have been through a tough year and a half, and I cannot express enough gratitude to the professionals who have done so much. I thank them for that and for the way that they welcome me into the schools. I am pleased to say that I have been able to visit every single one of them this last term. Speaker, I would like to now thank several people who have retired during the course of the past year. Derek Alman, who led my school education projects. And I would like to pay tribute also to 6 outstanding head teachers who have retired over the past 2 years. Rosanna Hitchcock from St. Paul's, Giselle Montegrifo from St. Joseph's Lower Primary, Leona Becassis from the Gibraltar College, Annabel Felipes from St. Martin's, Fiona Ferro from Governor's Meadow, and Michael Tavares from Bayside, after lifetimes teaching our children and young people. I also wish to thank the outgoing Director of Education, Jackie Mason. I wish them all a long and happy retirement. And I look forward to taking on more and more challenges and working with all in education to continue to progress on things that have needed fixing for a long time, but more importantly, to achieve new and better ways of helping our young people to be better than us. The Speaker, with regard to the University of Gibraltar, this, as honourable members know, is an autonomous educational institution established by the Gibraltar University Act, an achievement of my honourable friend Gilbert Ligudi. Since then, the university has continued to develop and grow as an institution, marking its 5th anniversary in September 2020, and I am pleased to be able to report on the following. Tuition fee income has almost tripled in the past 2 years, increasing from around 489,000 in 2019 to an estimated 1,325,000 in 2021, enabling the university to significantly progress towards self-sufficiency. The proportion of income, excluding donations, provided by the government's subvention has decreased from 86% in 2017 to an estimated 47%. This positive progress towards self-sufficiency is expected to continue, with the government's annual subvention being significantly reduced in this budget to 1.25 million, and the university's continued efforts to increase its tuition fee income by providing an excellent product and service and use of targeted marketing. Speaker, students enrolled on core academic programs, that is, excluding students engaged on professional and short courses, have increased from 30 in 2018-19 to 134 in 2020-21. Since September 2019, several new academic programs have been launched. The university welcomed over 200 students during its September 2020 enrollment week at the start of the last academic year. September 2020 also saw the university welcoming its largest number of international students from 10 countries, not including Gibraltar, in addition to Gibraltar, of course. The university was finally able to hold its first graduation ceremony in December 2020 and was one of the few higher education institutions anywhere able to celebrate a physical graduation ceremony. The university has recently established a Centre of Excellency in Responsible Gaming, led by its chair, Dr. Zsolt Demtrovic, and its International Scientific Board. The university's Gibraltar Maritime Academy commenced operations just the week before last. Management of COVID-19 required the entire university team to act quickly and decisively, with a smooth transition to staff and faculty working from home and the delivery of education online. The university laboratory, even though it caused disruption to PhD and marine science students, was made exclusively available as a COVID-19 screening laboratory to the GHA, using equipment supplied by the GHA and the university, and the lab continues this vital function to this date. The nursing simulation suite was made available to the GHA's ophthalmic clinic, and the university's ICT director was seconded to the GHA, and university nursing students played a major role in administering the COVID-19 vaccine as part of their first year placement. The university and its officials and academics continue to be involved in international initiatives and to host international events, thus contributing to the high profile and the good name of Gibraltar in academic and specialist circles abroad. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to my legislative agenda for the coming year. While many of the projects I am involved in are sadly delayed, I do, however, have a wide legislative programme that I plan to introduce. Among the bills that I intend to bring to this House are bills for a fully revised and updated Education Act, a revised Entertainment and Cultural Act, an act to set up the Gibraltar National Park, an Environmental Governance Act, a revised Garrison Library Act, a number of acts which subdivide and modernise the archaic and voluminous Public Health Act, and there is another important piece of legislation which we are about to publish. Mr. Speaker, this is an exciting initiative that Her Majesty's Government of Gibraltar has signalled in the past, but about which it has not up to now made any official announcement. I am therefore very pleased to be making a statement of this new potential industry for the first time in this House. It is important to explain that I am making this announcement in my capacity as the Minister for Public Health. Mr. Speaker, the new potential market to which I refer is medicinal cannabis. I am pleased to report that the draft of a bill for an act to make provision for the regulation of the production, import, export, marketing and supply of cannabis for medicinal and for connected purposes is now ready. The House will be interested to learn that the government is supporting the efforts of the private sector to establish the appropriate legal and regulatory architecture in order to create a robustly regulated medicinal cannabis industry. This regime will be fully compliant with the UN Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, 1961, as amended. Subject to final discussions with Her Majesty's government in the UK, we very much expect to be in a position to publish the command paper soonest and certainly during the course of this year. At this juncture, we foresee a number of potential outcomes, including regulatory alignment with the United Kingdom medicines and healthcare products in respect of certification of local licenses, engagement with Her Majesty's government departments and agencies in respect of UN Single Convention reporting and related matters, exploring product demand that may exist in the United Kingdom that Gibraltar's new economic sector may be well placed to supply, and synergies arising in respect of research and the development of the sector more broadly. Mr. Speaker, we have spared no effort to ensure that the proposed new industry is regulated fully in accordance with Gibraltar's international obligations under the UN Single Convention. It will be the strictest policy of the government that only the most reputable businesses will be able to be licensed under the draft medicinal cannabis bill. Such businesses must conduct their operations fully in accordance with the proposed new statutory licensing regime. Finally, Mr. Speaker, in respect of this subject, it is important to note that we are of the view that this new potential industry, comprehensively regulated to the highest standards, could well create an innovative and thriving sector of Gibraltar's economy. It could lead to new quality employment and export opportunity to different jurisdictions. It's predicted that medicinal cannabis as a business globally will continue to expand for the foreseeable future. It is vital that we remain open to such new opportunities to maintain our economic growth. This has underpinned our firm commitment to private industry by establishing the relevant statutory and regulatory legal framework. I trust that all honourable members will agree with us that we should seize the potentially positive economic prospects that a robustly regulated medicinal cannabis industry can deliver. Speaker, as ever, I wish to express my thanks to my personal staff and, of course, to my heads of department and CEOs, Liesl Messilio, Seamus Byrne, the Acting Director of Education, Kerry Scott, and Chris Segovia, the Chief Environmental Health Officer, for their hard work at all hours and every day, and to all their staff for their constant support, to all the staff in those agencies and contractors that work to my departments, to NASUWT, Unite and GGCA for their constructive work, to all the NGOs, associations, schools and academies, environmental, cultural, educational, who are so committed to what they believe in, often working as volunteers for being committed, honest and reasonable in pursuing their aims, to sponsors and to the trusts and foundations that support our work, now more appreciated than ever, to all those many citizens appointed to voluntary boards, working groups and committees for which I am responsible, and to all those other departments with whom I have regular contact, the staff at Number 6 and at the Gibraltar Law Offices, Gibraltar House in London and Brussels, Land Property Services, for always being there when I need them. To you, Mr. Speaker, and your staff, and to the Chief Minister and Deputy Chief Minister, always a source of advice, support and encouragement, and to all my other colleagues for their own work and support over these 2 difficult years. And finally, I would like to thank His Excellency the Governor, Sir David Steele, for the genuine and non-political interest that he shows in the work of different parts of my ministry. And in doing all of this, I too commend the bill to the House. Thank you, Mr.